In September of 2021, a fast food corporation announced that it had purchased an Alaskan town, not metaphorically, not as a branding exercise that anyone was supposed to take seriously. Jack in the Box, the burger chain, the one with the clown, issued a press release stating that it had acquired the town of Chicken, Alaska, in exchange for 10,000 cluck chicken sandwiches and a commemorative hat. The mayor of Chicken accepted the deal. There was a ceremony. There were sandwiches. Now, before you dismiss this as pure corporate absurdity, which it partly is, consider what it tells you about Chicken, Alaska. That this transaction was even possible. That a town could be purchased, symbolically, for fast food. That the mayor had the authority, or at least the audacity, to execute the sale. That the whole arrangement was conducted with complete deadpan sincerity by all parties. Consider what it tells you about a place where 12 people live year-round, where there is no power grid, where the outhouse situation is not a charming rustic detail, but an actual infrastructure reality, where the road is 66 miles of gravel that the state of Alaska keeps meaning to improve and keeps not improving, where the nearest town of any size is a 3-hour drive on a surface that will absolutely test your suspension. Consider what it tells you about a place that was almost named Ptarmigan and wasn't, according to the most popular story, because nobody could agree on how to spell it. And consider, this town has been here since 1886. It predates the Klondike by a decade. It predates Alaska statehood by 73 years. It has outlasted every economic rationale for its own existence. Every technological development that should have rendered it obsolete. Every winter that promised to be the last one anyone would bother staying for. 12 people. No grid. No pavement. No cell signal. One saloon. One extraordinary woman whose ghost still runs the place. And a name that is simultaneously the best and worst name in Alaskan history, depending entirely on your tolerance for the absurd. So, hit the brakes, or rather, slow down, because this road will destroy your alignment if you don't. The Taylor Highway runs from Tetlin Junction, itself not exactly a metropolis, north and east to Eagle on the Yukon River, passing through approximately nothing for 66 miles before it passes through Chicken, and then approximately nothing again for another 68 miles after that. What you see when you arrive in Chicken is this: a saloon, a cafe, a gift shop selling items of clothing that express varying degrees of chicken-related wordplay. And it would be unfair to say that the creativity runs thin, because some of it's genuinely inspired. A gas pump that may or may not be operational, depending on the day and the season and the factors that are not entirely clear. A dredge, a massive gold dredge, rusting in a field that looks like a building got confused and decided to become a ship. Some structures that began as one thing and then became another thing over the decades, in the way that buildings in remote Alaska tend to accumulate purpose and identity without any particular plan. And 12 people. 12 in winter. More in summer, when the adventure tourists and the off-road enthusiasts and the people who've read about Chicken and need to see it for themselves arrive in a small seasonal wave. Eat a burger, buy a hat that says something about clucking, and leave. The 12 who stay through the winter are a special kind of person. The kind of person who's looked at the available options for human habitation and concluded that this particular arrangement, no grid, no pavement, outhouses in February, 3 hours from the nearest hospital on a road that becomes genuinely dangerous in the wrong weather is preferable to the alternatives. This is not crazy. This is sort of a value statement. It just happens to be a value statement that most of us would not personally make. The 40-mile river drainage was yielding gold before anyone outside of Alaska had heard the word Klondike. 1886, 16 prospectors working the creeks. They called themselves the 16 Liars, a self-designation that tells you everything you need to know about the social structure of men who spend years in the Alaskan interior with no one to perform for but each other, and who have collectively decided that the performance of exaggeration is not a character flaw, but a competitive sport. The gold was real. The 40-mile country, the drainage running along what is now Alaska-Yukon border, was legitimately productive placer country. Gold in the gravel of the creek beds, the kind of alluvial deposit that patient men with gold pans and the complete absence of better options could work into a livelihood. A community grew up around Chicken Creek, specifically. Cabins first, then a roadhouse, then enough permanent residents that the federal post office decided the settlement needed an official name. Here's where the story forks. Fork 1. The version everyone tells. The version of the gift shop t-shirts. The version that has become local gospel. The miners wanted to name the town Ptarmigan, after the plump Arctic ground-dwelling bird that kept them alive through the winters. The bird that didn't have the sense or the instinct to migrate, and so remained year-round in the interior, available for hunting when everything else had gone south. But nobody could agree on the spelling. Ptarmigan. Ptarmigan. It's not really intuitive, doesn't really roll off the tongue, but it's Welsh in origin. The P is silent, and the men who'd been living in the bush for years were not, as a demographic, known for their orthographic precision. So they called it chicken instead. Close enough. Also a bird. Problem solved. Fork 2. The version that geologists prefer. An 1898 U.S. Geological Survey report suggests the name came from the gold itself. The placer nuggets in Chicken Creek were notably small, the size of cracked corn, the size of chicken feet, and the miners named the creek, and eventually the town, after the scale of what they were finding. Both stories are plausible. Both stories are very Alaskan. One involves collective illiteracy deployed as democratic problem solving. The other involves men so embedded in the economics of gold that they named their home after the disappointing size of what they were pulling out of the ground. Either way, the name is chicken, and the name is why you've heard of it. Anne Hobbs arrived in Chicken in 1927 by pack train from Eagle. She was a Bureau of Indian Affairs teacher, sent to this outpost of the American educational system to operate a school in a community that did not have a road, did not have a power grid, and was, by the standards of anyone who had not specifically chosen to be there, essentially off the map of civilization she'd come from. She was in her 20s. She married a gold miner named Clyde Purdy. She raised 11 children. 11 children in Chicken, Alaska, without a power grid, without outhouses, on a gravel road that didn't exist yet, in a climate that produces temperatures of 40 below and winters of darkness that compress the human spirit in ways that need to be experienced to be understood and probably shouldn't be. She also wrote books about it. Tisha, the autobiography she eventually produced, published in 1976, telling the story of her arrival in Chicken and her decades of life there became a regional classic, a portrait of interior Alaska life so specific and so alive that it reads not like history, but like a voice still talking from somewhere just outside your field of vision. Anne Hobbs Purdy was not a footnote. She was the main text. She was a young woman from outside who came to one of the most remote inhabited places in North America, built a life there by the specific combination of stubbornness and competence and humor that the place demanded, and then sat down and wrote it all out so that nobody could pretend it hadn't happened. 11 children, no grid, 3 hours from the nearest hospital. And she wrote the book. The Chicken Saloon is still open. This is worth saying plainly, without irony, without the satirical edge that this show usually applies to things. The Chicken Saloon is still open. And that's an achievement that deserves acknowledgement. Because keeping the saloon open in a town of 12 people in the Alaskan interior with no power grid and a 66-mile gravel road as your only supply route is not a business model. This is not location, location, location. It's an act of will. It is the physical manifestation of a community's refusal to complete its own disappearance. The saloon runs on a generator. The outhouse is around back if you want to go look for it. The beer's cold because Alaska, even without a grid, knows how to keep beer cold. And somewhere in a field nearby, the old gold dredge sits rusting, enormous, and incongruous. The machine that processed the creek gravel of the 40-mile country for decades, that extracted the small nugget, chicken feed-sized gold that named this place, or didn't, depending on which story you believe, a monument to an industry that made a community possible and then made itself unnecessary and left the community to figure out what came next. What came next was 12 people in a saloon and a fast food company buying the whole operation for sandwiches and a hat. What came next was Chicken Alaska. Still here, still misspelling nothing because the spelling was never the point. The point was the bird. The point was the cold. The point was 11 children and a woman with a book in her, and the specific kind of American stubbornness that looks at a place that has no earthly reason to exist and decides to exist there anyway. Jack in the Box can have the branding. The 12 people have the town. This has been Drive-Thru Towns. I'm your host, Andrew Wilcox. Special thanks to Chloe Jones for the music. Follow the podcast for upcoming episodes. Connect with me on Instagram at 50 State Family. Find me on LinkedIn under Wilcox Legal or email me at wilcoxlegal@gmail.com. And I'll see you on the next road.
'Cause I was wandering free on an American dream with a million things to see and do. But it's all good, I'm fine. Had the time of my life 'cause I did it all. We